Hey, welcome back to another Loop Station tutorial. My name is Playgue, and today we're going to be talking about the Synth. Synth is available on Track Effects and Input Effects A only, and this effect is pretty complicated, but at the same time it's not complex. And it ends up just sounding like a cat meowing at the end, like a sick cat. At the end of the day, the effect is not that complicated to use and to understand. What's really cool about a lot of these tutorials that I make is that they can be applied to the MK2 as well. So even though I am using an MK1, a lot of these tutorials can also be applied to the MK2. There may be little extra bits here and there, like the transpose as a sequencer built in, but for the most part, these are basically the same effects across devices. And that goes for the Synth as well. The Synth has all the same parameters and does the same thing on the MK2 as it does in the MK1. So let's go right into the parameters. We have frequency, we have resonance, we have decay, and we have balance. And that is it. Frequency is the tone that the synth sound will be coming out as. Sort of. So I have here recorded a sine wave of a C note. And I'm going to use Adobe Audition to show you what is going on. You can see the sound. There's the sine wave that you can clearly see on the band of the yellow there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply a synth to this sine wave, and we're going to make it 0-100, so we're only hearing the synth, and we're going to have the delay on max, so it's constantly going to be the synth sound. I want you to watch what happens with the sine wave as I change the frequency. So it's not technically changing the pitch of the sound or the actual note of the sound, but it is changing the strength at which the frequency is, I guess. It seems to be just filtering out the higher overtones. So all of those yellow bands that you saw, those are the overtones of the fundamental. The fundamental is the C note, but the overtones are the extra sounds that you're hearing, the extra yellow bands. It's more like you can control the brightness of the sound rather than its frequency. The way I like to think of frequency with the synth is controlling the brightness. Next is resonance. Resonance controls how strong the sound is at the given frequency. So the higher this number, the more prominent the frequency you set it at will pop out. So let's say you set the frequency at 100, and we're going to turn up the resonance. Again, looking at the spectrogram I have here, we're going to look at how the resonance increases that frequency. So you saw the higher the resonance is, the more prominent the frequency that you set at will pop out. The problem with this is that it's the highest pitched version and can be really annoying if you set it up too high. But it really depends on your mix though. Next is decay. Decay says how long to maintain the higher notes of the synth sound. So if I turn this down, you'll hear it kind of like start the sound of what we were hearing at 100, and then it'll decay or it'll fade out the actual synth. And we can set that for as long or as short as we want. Pretty cool. I like decay a lot. Decay is one of my favorite parts to mess around with the synth. So 0 to 99 will make it slowly fade down, not completely out though, so it doesn't turn the synth off and play the raw sound. But a decay of 100 will constantly have the synth on. And last is balance. Balance is controlled by the knob here, and it will control how much of the raw input is mixed with the synth. Here's my general impression of the synth, and what I think is happening is I think this synth isn't a powerful synth. It's just not a very good synth. It doesn't try very hard with the frequency control, and the resonance doesn't have much frequency control at all. It's just like, here's just the highest pitch version of the sound that you're trying to make. The decay is pretty good, but it's missing things that would make it useful, like attack, hold, and release. Like, those would all be very useful. The balance also leaves more to be desired. Even at 0-100, which is just pure synth, or at least it was supposed to be, you can clearly hear the source. So like if I set this up so you can hear my voice, well, you can still hear me even with a 0-100. I feel like this should be complete, like, it should all be the same regardless. It doesn't make any sense. 0-100 means I shouldn't be able to hear the raw input. But I think the reason behind that is just because of how this synth in particular works. It's using the source signal as part of the actual synth, and we're just hearing the processed part of the raw sound. So, like I said, I just don't think the synth is strong enough, which is really sad. Speaking of this synth not being powerful enough, it seems to have a threshold of some kind. What I mean by that is you need to be, like, it needs to reach a particular either frequency threshold or a volume threshold. I'm not sure which. Basically, I was playing around with the synth, trying to learn more about it, and I was playing with it yesterday while I was working out, and I have this little workout clock. Well, when a rest period was up, it started beeping and going off, and I was like, oh, let me hear what this sounds like in the microphone. It did nothing. I was recording it in Audition, listening to it. It literally recorded zero sound. It was like I had the microphone off. I had the input level knob maxed out. I had the EQ maxed out on everything, including levels. Like, I had the synth like maxed out. Nothing was making any sound. Again, I think there's some kind of threshold this synth because I don't fully understand why some sounds make it through but others don't. With all the gripes aside from the synth is still pretty cool. So what are some things that we can do with it? Well, we can transform what we already have. So for example, we can put this sound on a guitar and it sounds dope AF. Like, I was hanging out with my dad and showing him this thing, and he plays the guitar, and we hooked up his guitar into this. Oh man, he was elated at how cool that was. How I won his affection for this device was putting the synth on and having him play the guitar with it at like a decay, like with some random decays and just messing around. It was so much fun. Another thing is you can put this on a bass and it gives it more of a gritty kind of sound. So like we have a bass line here and we can turn the synth on. That's cool. Add some vocal distortion to it. And we can even add a tremolo. That's dope. Having the synth decay really low makes it so you can do like cool laser shooting sounds. That's cool. And if we have the decay on something much higher, we can have this really cool transforming effect. That sounds really basic with a sine wave, but if we add something more dynamic and with more harmony, we can get something like this. we can almost get like a filtered effect with other stuff, which is really cool. There are many ways to restart the decay as well. We have this baseline here. And what we can do is we can do this by double tapping the input effects or track effects A button, just like that. We can also use the fader in and out to mute the track, as you saw with me doing with Revoir. You can also do it by stopping the track and starting it again. Or if you're really clever, you can have a gap of no sound when the track loops, and it will start over when it loops. So try to make the sound lower than what the threshold is so it can restart its synth. So now there's a gap where that's below the threshold of the synth. We were talking about the frequency, not exactly changing the frequency of the tone of the sound. There is kind of a way to do it. So if you use a delay or panning delay of some kind, or even a granular delay, you can change the note of the synth that way too. So if we have this track here, changing the synth frequency again is just affecting brightness of the track, not actually changing the frequency. But if we change the delay note, now we can change the note that the synth is sounding in. And that's pretty much it for the synth. There's a lot of really cool ideas, a lot of potential with the synth sound. I mean, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with the synth, but that's all I have to share with you today. Down in the description, I put a link to the Wikipedia article on synthesizers that I used to better understand how synthesizers in general work. So if you want to check that out, you can. But let's learn how to use the synth in a greater context. keep me unfazed. I don't need a Mark II, I am the upgrade. Don't think you'll be leaving the bed feeling unscathed. You shouldn't even been here in the first place. I prefer 808 Bannon, but I guess it's even standing, cause check this out, I already know what you're planning. Playgue about to get big, I'm sitting these bars, I'm hitting these bitch, and rap so quickly, cause that's the only gimmick, but that shit is easy, bitch. RC, dropping scene, I don't care, talking shit, I ain't scared, I'm the shit. You're sick, why aren't you in Japan when you're back with your mom, trying to name when you're rap, so wait, I guess you can't, cause your style isn't memorable, my style's unforgettable, moving through the ranks, German soldier to the general, master of the energy, chatting up the GGB, I could be your shit with some bits, maybe I chat TBT, but hey, I don't wanna be wasting my time with wannabes, cause honestly, you're gonna regret dishonoring me. I was all for you being a super fan, but then this scam was talking shit about me publicly on Instagram. But what you said about my style wasn't offending me, cause here's something that doesn't make sense to me. Listen, if my shit's so confusing and hurts your little brain, then why has your style more or less looked the same? Sayonara.